Welcome to the first Inclusive Youth Leadership Training webinar, Exploring Leadership. During this webinar, we will explore what leadership looks like, traits that make a great leader, and what it looks like to be an inclusive youth leader. Throughout the course, questions will be posed to you. Simply take a minute or two to reflect and write some notes if you wish. This will be helpful for you as we continue on through the Inclusive Youth Leadership webinars. Now let's get started by learning a little more about Unified Champion Schools.
Hi, my name is Justin Hunzinger, and I am an intern with the Unified Champion Schools Resource and Communications team. I really enjoy working for the UCS department. This presentation is going to show you how vitally important Special Olympics Unified Champion Schools is. Today, I will go through the basics of Unified Champion Schools and how it plays a part in the inclusion revolution. Before I talk about Unified Champion Schools, let's look at the mission of Special Olympics and how UCS fits into this overall mission. The mission of Special Olympics is to provide year-round sports training and athletic competition in a variety of Olympic-type sports for children and adults with intellectual disabilities, giving them continuing opportunities to develop physical fitness, demonstrate courage, experience joy, and participate in the sharing of gifts, skills, and friendship with their families, other Special Olympics athletes, and the community. The Unified Champion Schools team uses the guiding values of the Special Olympics mission through a school setting. Through sports and leadership opportunities within a school, students with and without intellectual disabilities are developing friendships and relationships that change the way we think about inclusion. By the time students graduate from a Unified Champion School, they have gained a more inclusive mindset and maybe even a second family. Special Olympics Unified Champion Schools is a program for schools pre-K through university that intentionally promotes meaningful social inclusion by bringing together students with and without intellectual disabilities to create accepting school environments utilizing the three interconnected components: Special Olympics Unified Sports, inclusive youth leadership, and whole school engagement. UCS provides students with and without intellectual disabilities the opportunity to develop friendships and be part of the community. Now let's go more in depth about the three components that make up a Unified Champion School. Let's start with inclusive sports. A fully inclusive sports or fitness program combines an approximately equal number of students with and without intellectual disabilities. Inclusive sports can be a gateway for further participation in Special Olympics programs and events. Examples of this include intramurals, unified PE, unified health and fitness, or a unified sports day. Last fall, I had the opportunity to go to Colorado State University with the UCS team. This school utilizes all three components, which is why it was named an ESPN Top 5 National Banner School this past year. One way CSU does unified sports is through the Unified Flag Football team that gets to travel and compete against other unified teams. Whole school engagement is made up of awareness and education activities that promote inclusion and reach much of the school population. Examples of this include spread the word inclusion, an inclusive school dance, a unified pep rally, fans in the stands, or a banner presentation. When we traveled to CSU, we got to be there for the National Banner presentation, which is a celebration of all the hard work they have put into making their school a more inclusive place. This culminated with a celebration during halftime of a football game. This is a great example of whole school engagement. Inclusive youth leadership is when students with and without intellectual disabilities work together to lead and plan advocacy, awareness, and inclusive activities throughout the school year. This could include U.S. youth ambassadors or state youth activation committees, inclusive youth leadership classes, and college clubs. One way I got to see inclusive youth leadership in action was at the Generation Unify event last October. Many of the youth ambassadors spoke about their experiences as inclusive youth leaders and led sessions throughout the day. Hearing these youth ambassadors tell their stories was very inspiring. Unified Champion Schools receives generous funding through the Office of Special Education Programs in the U.S. Department of Education. ESPN, the global presenting partner of Unified Sports, also supports our national recognition program for schools that have met our 10 standards of excellence. Hasbro also supports national banner presentations. The funding that Special Olympics Unified Champion Schools receives allows this strategy to expand to more schools, therefore allowing educators to do more to help their students grow and be successful, not just through school and sports, but successful in life. There are currently 7,623 Unified Champion Schools within 48 states and DC. This includes 394 national banner schools. The Unified Champion Schools team is working towards a goal of 10,000 schools by 2025. As this program continues to grow, we are seeing a more inclusive world, and it's all thanks to the hard work and effort by students, educators, and Special Olympics program staff to improve school experiences for students with and without intellectual disabilities. Social inclusion through Unified Champion Schools is changing how entire school communities perceive students and people with intellectual disabilities. Social and emotional learning is such a tremendously complex and interesting concept. It also is an ongoing learning experience throughout your entire life. Some of the qualities of social and emotional learning include self-awareness and relationship skills. These findings by the Heart Research Team are important. What this slide shows is that to the general public, the most important thing that Unified Champion Schools does is reduce bullying. Special Olympics Unified Champion Schools is reducing bullying through such initiatives as the Spread the Word campaign, which ends stereotypes and judgment. This is changing the landscape for both people with and without ID. All three components of UCS work towards reducing bullying. For example, by building unified clubs, you open a door for all students. even those that may have been bullies in the past, to connect in a compassionate kind of way. This slide shows that the general public thinks all three of our components are important to our work. The three components individually play a role, but also work together to create a more inclusive environment both in schools and in communities. For instance, whole school engagement allows students to come together through social gatherings and all different types of events. Inclusive youth leadership allows students to become true leaders in their schools and in their school's community. By advocating for all people with and without intellectual disabilities, Unified Sports allows the entire school, both students, teachers, and staff, to come to all the sporting events and witness a different way of thinking about how sports can unify a school. Sharing the resources of Unified Champion Schools is very important because it allows everyone from SRI staff to Special Olympics program staff to be using the same materials in an effort towards the larger goals of UCS. Here are the different ways you can find our resources: www.resource.specialolympics.org, www.generationunified.org, UCS Scoop, the flyers around the office. Social media, please follow us at SO North America. UCS staff, the latest score. It is very important to meet the team because everyone on the UCS team plays an important and unique role. For example, the grant administration is in charge of ensuring our reporting back to the Department of Education is in good shape. The technical assistance team works with Special Olympics state programs that receive DOE funding to ensure quality and growth in the UCS program. You can also get to know the team during group lunches or Zoom catch-ups. It is of vital importance that all the different teams and departments know each other because it allows the entire organization to become a stronger team in terms of how we work with each other. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Now that you know a little more about Unified Champion Schools, we are ready to dive into inclusive youth leadership. Inclusive youth leadership is a pretty big topic. There are multiple components that go into it. We will start by breaking it down into its three parts. What is inclusive youth leadership? Well, the first part of this is inclusion. So let's take a look at this word. Our definition of inclusion is as follows: empowering all individuals to feel comfortable and maximized in their efforts to contribute. Well, what exactly does this mean? It can mean that you see the ability in all individuals. It also means that when you are discussing topics, you are discussing as a collaborative team, meaning you seek and value input from all members of the team. Finally, it means that you, as youth leaders, are engaging in equitable conversations. Later on in this webinar, we will explore what equity is, but for now, equitable means that during your conversations, you are making sure all members of your team are fully able to participate. What else do you think of when you think of the word inclusion? Feel free to take a minute to write down any thoughts you might have. Now, let's move on to the second part of the phrase, youth leadership. Our definition of youth leadership is respecting the thoughts and nature of all members in a group to effectively enhance the talents of everyone for overall group success. Once again, let's break this down. In order to respect all members of a group, you must have effective communication and active listening. This may take some practice. Effective communication will not be the same for everyone, and it is your job as youth leaders to figure out the best way to communicate with each other. Active listening is just as important, and it requires that when a member of your team or group is talking to you, you are fully present, listening carefully, and showing your peer or teammate that you hear them. You can do this by acknowledging what they are saying. For example, saying, "Yes, I understand that," or using your body language. So looking at them while they are speaking, not checking your phone, and not constantly looking around the room. You can also show you are listening by asking follow-up questions to show that you are engaged. Additionally, respecting all members of your group as a youth leader means learning how to delegate tasks and responsibilities. This means that instead of trying to do everything yourself or only doing things your way, you share your responsibilities with a team and make the whole team even better. In youth leadership, it is also important to guide your group with confidence. This takes practice, and that is why you are here on this webinar. What else do you think is important in youth leadership? Once again, you may take a few minutes to write down any thoughts you have. The third part of this phrase is putting everything together, inclusive youth leadership. The definition for this is leadership grounded in a belief that all people have ability and can engage in meaningful leadership opportunities if given the support, resources, and time through experience and reflection. This is what you are here to learn about. So let's talk a little more about what this means. First, as an inclusive youth leader, it is important to co-create tasks that will benefit each individual in your group. This means working with everyone in your group to create projects, taking input from all team members, and making sure that each person is in charge of something that they want to be in charge of, and that will play to their strengths. The second part of this is that you must all support the same goal. This is incredibly important because as an inclusive youth leader, you must be constantly checking in with all your teammates to ensure that everyone is on the same page and equally invested in the goal as you are. That way, you will be leading as a group and not simply all following one leader. As an inclusive youth leader, it is important to know your own strengths and weaknesses, as well as help your teammates or members of your group understand each of their strengths and weaknesses. Individuals with strengths in particular areas or activities should be given the opportunity to lead with the support and encouragement of the rest of their team. This way, the responsibilities are shared and the leadership is distributed amongst everyone. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, as inclusive youth leaders, you must always respect the ideas, opinions, and views of other people. Everyone sees the world through a different lens, and while you may not always agree with everyone at all times, you must always be respectful. Thinking about all of this, what else would you add when thinking about inclusive youth leadership? Once again, you may take a few minutes to write down any thoughts that you have. Now that we have gone over the basics of inclusive youth leadership, let's take a closer look at what leadership really means. When thinking about leadership, it is important to understand that there are many different leadership styles. So what exactly is a leadership style? It is simply the way that one leads. Leadership style depends on things like one's personality, strengths, weaknesses, goals, experience, and communication style. So as you can see, it depends on a lot of things. Someone who is loud and outgoing will lead in a very different way than someone who is quiet and maybe more shy. But both of these personalities have the ability to be strong leaders. We each bring our own special flair to leadership based on all of these factors. So we know that there are many different kinds of leadership styles. But what makes a great leader? Most people think that a leader has to be one specific kind of person. Generally, people think of leaders as the people who are in charge, the most outgoing or experienced, or just the most well-liked. However, there are actually so many different kinds of leaders. All leaders bring something different to the table based on their strengths and experiences, and all leaders need support in different ways. On the picture in the middle of the slide, you can see some of the words that can be used to describe a great leader. Now let's hear directly from a youth leader about what she thinks makes a great leader.
I think what makes a person a great leader is having the ability to lead by example and to not care about what other people think of you. I think that a great leader doesn't always have to be the loudest person in the room, but I do think that they should not be afraid of stepping up and advocating for what they truly believe in.
Now it's your turn. What do you think makes a great leader? Take a few minutes to think and write down any notes you have. You'll need them later. It's time to look at the different parts of leadership, specifically strengths and values and how these come together to form leadership. Let's think of a soccer team. All players on the team are important to the group's win. Could the captain of the soccer team win by himself? What if you had a team full of goalies? Would they be able to win? No, of course not. Each person on the team has a different role to play, and they practice their specific role. This means they strengthen their skills within that specific role. Because of this, if the goalie switched places with the kicker, the team would not work well. Not everyone is perfect at everything, but everyone is great at something. Part of being a great leader is recognizing the strengths of each person and learning how to use those strengths to reach a goal. Once you have identified your strengths, you can then start to think about your values. Values are our compass. They help guide our decisions so that we can find the best path forward. Person to person, values may differ slightly, and we may not all lead in the same way. However, there are several values that all inclusive youth leaders share. These are inclusion, respect, meaningful involvement, and equity. Let's take a look at each of these more carefully. The first value of inclusive youth leadership is inclusion. Inclusion is the most important part of the unified movement and part of everything we do at Special Olympics. It is the core goal. To practice inclusion means to make sure all members of your school, workplace, or community are involved in a meaningful way. The second value of inclusive youth leadership is respect. An inclusive youth leader respects everyone, including those who are different from them. Everyone sees the world differently, but when you build respectful relationships with those around you, it enables you to be a better leader. The third value of inclusive youth leadership is meaningful involvement. Meaningful involvement goes beyond simply including your peers. It means identifying and acknowledging each person's individual strengths and giving them a chance to shine. Every person should be given the opportunity to lead, learn, and grow. The final value of inclusive youth leadership is equity. Now, equity may sound a lot like equality, but it's actually very different. Equity means that all people are treated fairly. This means everyone is given the opportunities, support, and space that they need to be strong leaders. Take a look at the picture. You'll notice that there is a fence. Equality means that each individual would be given the same exact box to use to see over the fence. However, look at the three people. Does that same exact box help each person the same amount? No. In fact, the box only helps one person completely, one person a little, and one person not at all. However, equity would mean that each person is given a different amount of support to see over the fence. This is the importance of equity. Now, after hearing and learning a little more about strengths and values, can you think of a leader that you admire? Let's hear from another youth leader about a leader that they admire.
A leader I admire is Martin Luther King Jr. I admire Martin Luther King Jr. because of his famous I Have a Dream speech, which I learned throughout elementary through high school, and we have an observance day in honor of him. If I create a I Have a Dream speech, it would be that our society can be more inclusive and end discriminatory hate against individuals with disabilities and empower everyone to make a change in their own lives.
Now it's your turn. Who is a leader that you admire? Why do you admire them? Take a few minutes to think and write down any notes you have. You'll need them later. We have now come to the end of your first Inclusive Youth Leadership Training webinar. There was a lot of information covered, so to wrap things up, here are some of the key takeaways. First, leadership styles are unique to every person. They can change depending on who we are and what we are doing. To see leadership styles in action, we can look to leaders in our community and to other people we admire. Everyone might have different opinions on who they think are great leaders, and that is okay. Everyone leads differently, and diversity in leadership is important. Not everyone has the same strengths. But while not everyone will have the same strengths, there are some values that all inclusive youth leaders share. These are inclusion, respect, meaningful involvement, and equity. Lastly, we should all lead with our strengths and values. Congratulations on completing the first Inclusive Youth Leadership Training webinar. The final thing you will need to do now is complete your exit ticket. This can be submitted through the link found below the video. Using the link, send us your answers to the 2 questions from this lesson. What do you think makes a great leader? And name a leader you admire and why you admire them. Once again, congratulations.